Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to dive into a completely fresh, honestly kind of mind-bending interpretation of one of the most famously difficult books of the 20th century. We're talking about Ludwig Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Now, usually this text gets treated as this ultimate, super dry rulebook of logic, the pioneer of logical positivism. But today, thanks to some really fascinating new analysis, we're going to look at it through a totally different lens, the lens of Solipsism. We're going to see how a strict, rigorous work of logic actually transforms into a deeply personal and surprisingly ethical guide to living your life. Right off the bat, let's look at Proposition 5.62 from the Tractatus. The world is my world. Okay, talk about a one-two punch. In a book that is literally dedicated to rigorous mathematical logic, Wittgenstein suddenly throws down a statement that sounds incredibly heavy, highly subjective, and, well, deeply personal. It almost sounds like a confession of total self-absorption, right? So, you gotta ask the obvious question here. Is this just extreme subjectivism? Like, why on earth would one of history's greatest logical thinkers write something that sounds like the ultimate solipsistic trap? Is he genuinely arguing that absolutely nothing exists outside of his own mind? It's a really shocking statement to find in a book about logic, and it is the central mystery we're going to unpack for you today. Section 1. Contradiction, Logic, and Solipsism. To unravel this whole mystery, we first need to look at the massive contradiction set up at the very beginning of his book. Long before he ever says the world is my world, Wittgenstein opens his entire philosophical masterpiece with this incredibly famous line. The world is everything that is the case. That's proposition number 1. And right here, he establishes the world as a logical totality of facts. This world exists completely independently of whether you or I or literally anyone else is here to experience it, see it, or even think about it. It is the absolute objective totality of all states of affairs. And bam, there's our tension. This is the absolute core contradiction of our source material, laid out plain as day. How can a world exist completely independently of us, as a purely logical totality of facts, while simultaneously being, as he claims later on, my world? It really feels like two completely incompatible views of reality just smashed together in the same exact book. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 2, the two-layered world. So, to resolve this philosophical tension, Wittgenstein builds this brilliant little mechanism. He separates existence from experience into two distinct layers. Layer 1 is the world as totality of facts. That's the whole shebang, everything that logically exists completely independent of us. But Layer 2 is my world of experience. This is the specific range of that absolute universe that I can actually experience, grasp, and comprehend. It's the slice of reality that actually has meaning to me. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how he isn't confusing the two at all. He's drawing a hard, sharp boundary right between them, separating existence from experience. And this is exactly what completely separates him from extreme solipsists. An extreme solipsist looks at this two-layered model and claims that layer 1, that independent world, simply doesn't exist at all. They think only their personal experience exists. But Wittgenstein, he doesn't do that. He never denies that an independent world exists out there. He simply argues that we cannot explain it from the outside. We're essentially trapped inside layer 2. Our entire lives, our thoughts, our language, they only operate in the realm of what we can actually experience. In a way, his philosophy is really a philosophy of withholding judgment about what's outside that boundary. But hold on, to really grasp this, let's play philosophical detective for a second. If layer 2 is the world of meaning, we have to ask the absolute crucial question, what does meaning actually mean to Wittgenstein? How do we bridge that massive gap between something simply existing out there and something actually being comprehensible to us? Let's slow down here, because this is absolutely crucial. This is our meaning anchor. For Wittgenstein, meaning is not about psychology. It's not about your feelings or, how a beautiful poem makes you cry. Meaning is strictly defined as positionality in logical space. What that means is a proposition, a statement about the world, only has meaning if it depicts a possible state of the world that can be definitively proven true or false. So if you say, it is raining outside, well, that has meaning because we can check if it's true or false. This means there is a massive difference between something just existing and something actually having meaning. The world itself might exist, sure, but trying to talk about the world as a whole, that doesn't fit into a simple true or false box. Which brings us to Section 3, meaningless questions. You see, this incredibly strict logical definition of meaning creates a massive trap. And not just for traditional philosophers, but honestly for our own deep-seated human anxieties. Wittgenstein used a brilliant metaphor for this, the fly bottle. When we try to step outside of our experienced world to guarantee that the universe exists or to prove the ultimate nature of reality, we are quite literally like flies buzzing around frantically inside a glass bottle, trapped by our own confusing language. We're trying to make claims about the totality of the universe. But remember, we can only speak meaningfully about specific facts inside the universe. By trying to talk about the whole thing, we aren't actually solving deep mysteries. We're just creating chaotic philosophical pseudo-problems. Here's the grand contrast, just to make it super clear. On the left, we have empirical propositions, like, I experienced something new today. This is perfectly fine. It has meaning, you lived it, it happened, it's a fact. But on the right, we have universal or prophetic propositions, like, the external world will always exist independent of me. This is where the logic completely breaks down. You cannot step outside of time and space to verify if the external world is going to exist forever. It's an unanswerable universal claim. And this is exactly why what the source calls prophetic realism just completely fails. Think about it. Just because you've observed the world existing every single day of your past, that does not logically guarantee it will exist tomorrow. You can't predict the universe forever. So trying to intellectually guarantee the existence of the world just creates a pseudo-problem. Wittgenstein isn't saying the real world isn't out there. He's simply making the point that trying to logically guarantee its permanent existence is a philosophically meaningless claim. You are effectively speaking nonsense because you're trying to use the rules of Layer 2 to describe the entirety of Layer 1. So you're probably thinking, what is the point of philosophy then? Well, according to this reading of the Tractatus, philosophy's ultimate job is not to be a textbook of new universal laws. It is not supposed to find new facts. Its job is actually therapeutic. It's an unknotting of our cognitive dissonance. It's supposed to show the fly the way out of the fly bottle, freeing us from these agonizing, totally unanswerable pseudo-problems we trap ourselves in. And this brilliantly illustrates Section 4, the practice of silence. All right, here it is. This brings us to his most famous, yet profoundly misunderstood conclusion. Proposition 7, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Now, I know you've probably heard this quote before. It sounds like a philosophical surrender, right? Like he's just giving up, throwing his hands in the air, or confessing absolute ignorance. But I want to assure you, based on everything we've just uncovered, this is absolutely not a surrender. Here is the final unknotting. The true meaning of silence in the Tractatus is actually incredibly liberating. It's not a denial of the world. Rather, it is the active, ethical choice to just let go of the impossible desire for theoretical guarantees. We stop trying to force the universe to promise us that it will always make sense. We stop asking these meaningless prophetic questions. And by embracing that silence about the absolute, we are finally truly free to act and live ethically within the world we do experience. Silence isn't giving up on the world. Actually, it's living in it. When you drop that exhausting desire to theoretically guarantee the universe, you finally separate what can be spoken from how to live. The logic takes care of the facts, and the silence takes care of your life. It is a profoundly practical, deeply ethical stance. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Think about all the anxieties and the theoretical guarantees you chase in your own life. If you no longer needed the universe to theoretically guarantee your existence, what would you do with your silence today? How would you live in your world? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this completely changes how you think about logic, solipsism, and the art of letting go.